Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our talk show. This is your regular host. My name is Angelo, your real estate consultant. And you can consult me for any real estate needs that you have anywhere within Nigeria, especially Lagos State. So today I'm going to talk about something that pertains to a certain aspect of land purchase ownership. And I'm talking about land ownership and titles. There is a lot of confusion when it comes to land ownership and title documents, especially within Lagos State. Now, within Lagos is a very, very particular kind of place because the Lagos State government has an interest in land, so they pay attention to what goes on with land. Now, there are documents and titles that have come up over the years for land titles in Lagos State. But however, I will recap all of them. I'm going to give us a brief narrative of each and every one of them, and I'll start from the genesis up until the end. First, I'm going to talk about is freehold. Now, remember I said this is not just land titles, but title and ownership. Some of these will fall under ownership, some will fall under titles. Now, freehold is ownership. Freehold refers to the ownership of land that is free from any government encumbrance. Freehold is usually, said to be on a land that is owned by the native settlers, the initial native settler, people who came to that land first. They are the ones who have the title of freehold. When you have a freehold land and government has no interest in that area, that's why it's called freehold. Now, freehold land is a good land to purchase. You can purchase it for commercial business, industrial business, or even residential. So freehold land is the first title, and it's the first ownership, of land. And then from there, especially in Lagos State, like I said, we have special emphasis on Lagos State. You now have what is called excision. Excision means that in an area where Lagos State government is interested in a part of land. I'll give you an instance now. Maybe Ibejuleki, the Dangote refinery area. For instance, government has a Lekki Free Trade Zone and then the refinery. For where the Lekki Free Trade Zone exists, there is government interest. But government is not interested in the entire Ibejuleki area. It's only interested in the area that it has used for the free trade zone. What about the other areas that government is not interested in? Those areas are free for the owners of the land to actually sell, buy, and do business on. How do you now know as a buyer which part of those lands in Ibejuleki is free and which part government has an interest in? That is where the excision document now comes in. That excision document is a document that will excise a portion of land from an area and give back to the indigenes or initial settlers for them to trade, live, and do business on. It is excised and given back to them for them to carry out their operations. So that is, and where government does this, government now gives them a document called the excision document. That excision document, when you go to map and when you go to the government secretariat to Alausa and you go to search for it, you see that okay, the land that you intend to buy falls under the excised portion of the land. That means in that area you're free to buy, but the areas where the government is interested in, you shouldn't touch because that one has government interest. Now, the next document we're going to talk about is Gazette. Gazette is also a document, land ownership document. Now, what is a Gazette? A Gazette is simply an excision that the people who he has, the initial settler that an excision has been granted and they've been given an excision document. Now take it back to that same government and say, okay, go to the Bureau of Land. We want you to document this, record it, have it in your register. And when they do that, they enter it into their journal and then they give you the Gazette number And so that means that land has gazettes. I hope you see the progression of these titles and ownership documents. Now, when a land is gazetted, if you go to search for it with the gazette number, you'll be able to find it in the government approved gazette at Alausa. So that is about gazette. It's simply excision that has been documented again by government. The excision itself means government has given a document to people that you can trade, live, do whatever you want on this portion. Now they have taken it back to government to go and register it and have it in the government records. That's gazette. Now, after that, we talk about C of O. This is the popular one that everyone knows, or most people know. The one that everyone keeps talking about, C of O. When you have a C of O document, that means Certificate of Occupancy. Now, this C of O dates back to the 1979 Land Use Act. The Land Use Act says that all lands within a state is vested in the state governor. And then in the case of FCT, on the FCT minister. And it is the FCT minister or the state governor that can exercise the right to on the land on behalf of the people. This land is held in trust for the people. It doesn't mean the governor is the owner of the land, but he exercises right over it in trust on behalf of the people. So if you purchase land and you go to government and say, okay, I have purchased this land from the initial settler, it was freehold and I purchased it. It has an excision document and I purchased it. It has gazette document and I purchased it. And I now approach government and say, okay, I want you to give me a certificate of occupancy. The government will now look at it and say, okay, they will go and do some assessments based on location, use, and a lot of other parameters that are involved. And at the end of the day, they will now give you what is called certificate of occupancy, where the governor signs off that yes, he's aware that this land now belongs to Mr. XYZ. And you are given that certificate of occupancy. And the certificate of occupancy has a lifespan of 99 years according to the Land Use Act. So you have certificate of occupancy, and that is a land title. The others have been documented so far, but this ownership document so far, but this one is a title. Now, after certificate of occupancy, the next thing you have is governor's consent. Governor's consent is simply a certificate of occupancy that has passed from the initial owner to another person. For instance, Mr. A purchases a plot of land and he proceeds to government to get certificate of occupancy, and it is issued in the name of Mr. A. But Mr. A subsequently sells the land to Mr. B. Mr. B cannot get a second certificate of occupancy because a certificate of occupancy is issued once in the lifetime of any property. You can't issue it twice. So what will Mr. B do? Because he wants the government to recognize that he is now the new owner. He approaches the government with his deed of assignment, and when he gets to the governor's office, he informs them that he has done the purchase, shows them proof of transaction and every other thing. Again, they assess and do re-evaluation and all that based on some certain parameters, and then they will now issue him what is called the governor's consent. That governor's consent is now issued on top of the certificate of occupancy to show that this particular land has passed from Mr. A to Mr. B. That is all there is to know about the governor's consent. Then after governor's consent, what else? What other kind of title can you have on a land? You can have court judgment. When people hear that land is under litigation, they run away. Yes, during the process of litigation, there's everything. There's something about the courts. When a matter is before the law courts, they maintain status quo. Nothing is to be done. Everything is left as it is until that court case is totally and thoroughly discharged and judgment is given. However, once judgment is given over a land, you can purchase that land. You see that court judgment, it is valid. Now, I'll tell you why it is valid. The democracy we run, there are three arms of government. Legislature makes the law, executive executes the law, judiciary interprets the law. Of the three arms of government, the judiciary is actually the strongest, the most powerful, because it interprets the law. Whatever it says is final. Even the executive and the legislature cannot change what it says. They have to go through a process to legislate again, to execute again before they can come to the judiciary. And that's why, because of their plenty power, that's why the judiciary is usually silent, aside from interpreting the law. So, when you have a court judgment, that is a valid title to land. If you see any land you want to buy and a land has court judgment, once the judgment has been delivered, please buy it. There is always a reference to the court judgment that gave that land. It is as strong as a CFO or governor's consent. So please, it is a very, very valid title. Now, something else, talking about ownership, there is what is called letter of probate. A letter of probate refers to when somebody who owns a land, for instance, Mr. A has a land. Mr. A is in the process of selling the land to Mr. C. And within the period, for instance, now, Mr. A dies. The land document titles of the land titles are in Mr. A's name. He's the only one that can sign off. But that transaction is necessary to complete, even though Mr. A has died. But he's the only one whose signature can be valid on that document. So what do? That becomes, it becomes a challenge. So at law, there's something called letter of probate. The family or the estate of Mr. A can approach the law courts and say, okay, we were in the process of concluding this deal that will benefit the entire family, but Mr. A died, and he's the one that should have signed off on our behalf. So all the documents are, are in his name. So please give us a letter of probate. Now the court goes through the process, and then when it has found that yes, all they have said is valid and correct, it will issue them a letter such that the estate, that land, can be, someone else can sign off on that land in place of Mr. A, and that decision will still be valid. That is what the law court does. That's when you talk about letter of probate. Now, the final ownership system is the letter of administration. Now, this letter of administration is when it comes up in the case that someone again dies. Mr. A dies and he has a land. What now happens to his property? He didn't pass it on to anybody. He didn't sell it to somebody. He didn't transfer it to ownership to another person. And possibly he died intestate. So letter of administration is again issued. You now approach the courts. The family or the estate of Mr. A will approach the court, and the court will now give them right to continue to administer all that Mr. A owns on his behalf. As he has passed on, he's no longer going to be able to do all of these things himself anymore. So that is the final ownership structure. So I'm going to have further sessions where I'll take all of these ownership and titles one by one and go into more details about them. But for today, this is in brief, talking about all the land ownership and titles. Again, I tell you, my name is Angelo. My social media handles on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp at Austin Cates. You can follow us. My phone number 0803-601-1511. You can reach out or call with any questions. If you wish to purchase land anywhere in Lagos or in Nigeria and you have some doubts, please reach out and we'll put it clear to you and we'll help you clarify the issues and help you sort it out. We're also a real estate consultancy and we have lands and houses for sale. So, thank you very much and God bless you. Till we see again. Thank you.